Hey, it's Johara. Welcome back to my channel. So, I'm going to do a video, which I planned to do a few days ago, but then I was having trouble with some of the research. But it is from I'm going to be talking about this old TV show called Soap. So, it was made in the 70s, only lasted 4 years. Last season sucked. Season 3 pretty much sucked. It was a little better than season 4. I liked the first few episodes, but honestly it went downhill pretty fast because Benson left, then Tim left, then Corinne left, and Corinne and Benson were two of the best characters. Jody was one of the best characters too. I don't think he left. I might be wrong, but I don't think he left. Not to mention, the series was canceled before it got instead of getting renewed for season 5, and it left off at like 3 different cliffhangers, maybe 4. But yeah, so that's always fun. But I don't think many people know about this show or remember it. I don't think anyone from my generation know about it, which is a little upsetting because it was a good show. I mean, I'm not gonna say I love it like it's my favorite show. No, not even close, especially since I only really love the first 2 seasons. Well, season 2 is actually when it started going downhill. I just rewatched it, the first 2 seasons, some of the beginning of season 3. I was like, season 1 had me cracking up every single episode. Like, every episode I was laughing every 5 minutes. Especially with what I'm going to be talking about with this episode, because there's some funny scenes that have to do with this one character. Well, technically 2 characters, but season 2 had me cracking up for the most part. Season 2 is when they started doing storylines that I wasn't too fond about. Like, I actually didn't mind the possessed baby part. That was alright. But I was upset with the whole fact that that storyline caused Corinne and Tim to split up, which caused both of them to leave. And I like both characters, especially Corinne. She's my favorite. But then there was the alien storyline, which I didn't like. And there was the fact that Danny was. I'm pretty sure that's how Danny ended up in the hospital, and you find out that about who his real father is, which I didn't like that either. And because at the end of season 2 he was trying to track down his wife's killers, and they end up getting the upper hand on him, and I'm pretty sure he gets injured, and that's how he ends up in the hospital, and that's how everyone found out who his real father is. But like I said, it's been forever since I've seen later seasons. I mean, there's a lot I forgot in season 2 even when I was rewatching it. But yeah, I don't remember anything from like seasons 3 and 4 except for the little of season 3 I just watched. I remember a couple small things that happens, but I don't really remember them. I just kind of know they happened, like, because it's been forever. The only really thing I remember is the finale, because it ended off at like 3 different cliffhangers, like I mentioned. But anyways, point of this video is we're gonna be talking about Chuck and Bob. So towards the beginning of season, Soap, I'm going to explain a little bit about Soap, because a lot of you probably don't know what Soap is. There's these 2 different families, right? The Tates and the Campbells. And Tates live in this big house with a butler and all this in a rich neighborhood because they're rich. And then the Campbells are poor in the small house, and they do not get along for the most part. They have moments where they somewhat get along. The only thing that connects these 2 families is the fact that the mothers of both families are sisters, and they're really close. Jessica Tate and Mary Campbell, and it's a story about the 2 of them and their families. Mary's really smart. Her previous husband died, so now she's married to Bert, who his wife had left him. It's mentioned her a few times at the beginning, because it's mentioned like she took her sons and moved to Hawaii and stuff, because you do meet his sons. But then she has 2 sons of her own, both adults, and his are both adults as well. And then Jessica is the sweetest character, no doubt, but she is a bit naive and ditzy and not too bright. It's not really that she's dumb or anything, she's just naive and gullible, stuff like that. But she has a big heart and she cares. She's been married to the same man for a while. All her kids are his as well. But he cheats on her constantly, and she was always naive about it. She did end up catching him and stuff. He still tried to deny it, even though she caught him. Like he, but anyways, she had Mary Mary has two sons, Danny and Jody. Danny was a member of like a mob and stuff. Jody's gay, and then Bert has two sons, Peter, who ends up dying, and there's this whole murder thing where they thought Corinne did it, and then they thought, and she was in jail for a while, and that's when they found out that she was actually adopted, and her real mother is a terrible woman, Swedish, and apparently Jessica and Mary's long lost brother is her biological father. So there's all that too, you know, and apparently Jessica and Mary's mom kidnapped her and kidnapped her, deported the Swedish mom, and then gave her to Jessica to be raised because she wanted the baby. So that's basically what happened. So of course she's a little ticked, but she was still a terrible person. Corinne was mad at Jessica and Chester for a little while, but then ended up realizing that they're her parents and the Swedish woman isn't. I'm probably explaining the show a little bit too much. Oh well. But yeah, so Peter ended up dying, and then shortly after, Chuck and Bob arrived. Chuck is Bert's son. Bob is his dummy because he's a ventriloquist and he thinks Bob is real, and that has come out. And Bob is also kind of cruel sometimes. Like he'll say the first thing come out of his mouth, and a lot of times everyone will get mad at Bob, and then sometimes they even forget that Bob isn't real, and then they'll be yelling at Bob, and then even try to attack Bob, which I'll get on to with what this video is about. But anyways, and then there's Mary, Jessica, and Chester, and they have 3 kids. Eunice kind of wants what she can't have. At the beginning, she was dating this Cancelman who she can't have because he's married, and if anyone found out that he was having an affair, it could ruin his everything, because he was also trying to be a senator or whatever. And then there's then later on she ended up falling in love with a convicted killer on the run, and they had to keep hiding from the police and stuff. And then there's Corinne, who's my favorite, and she is she sleeps around a lot, but that's only because she couldn't have the one man she was in love with, and she didn't know she didn't know how to take it, because the man she was in love with was a priest. He's someone she's known her entire life. They dated in high school and stuff. He became a priest. She was still in love with him. He eventually left the priesthood because he couldn't stop thinking about her, and he realized he wanted to marry her, so he asked her to marry him. And I love them together. They're my favorite couple. But then there's Billy, the 14-year-old. I think he's 14. He's like the only non-adult out of all of them. First, like 2 seasons, he didn't even really have a storyline. He was just basically the guy that everyone told to leave whenever something serious happened, because they didn't want him around for that. But yeah, so yeah, they have complicated life. They all have secrets and stuff. But this list is about Chuck and Bob, because Bob is something else, and I love whenever they do something to Bob, and then and then someone else will say, but he's not real. They're like, what's wrong? Like, it's just hilarious. So this is top 6 moments when everyone has had enough with Bob. Or, I haven't figured out how I'm going to name it yet. Maybe it'll be like top 6 moments when everyone tried to kill Bob. Well, not all of these, they tried to kill Bob, but they have tried to kill Bob, which is a little funny. So, let's get into the list, shall we? Because I explained a little bit too much about the show, but I wanted to kind of let you know what the show is about. Because these 2 families fight constantly. The only reason why they're in each other's lives is because Jessica and Mary are sisters, and they're really close, too. Oh, I forgot. In the Tates, they have the butler Benson, who is hilarious as well. He hardly ever smiles, and I think he only cried once when Jessica was found guilty for Peter's murder, even though she didn't do it, because she couldn't hurt a fly. But and then there's also the Major, who's Jessica and Mary's dad, who I think has like Alzheimer's or something like that, because he thinks he's still in World War II. So a lot of times he'll end up going out shooting the neighbors, and he'll go missing, and everyone starts being frantic and this and that. So yeah. So number 6 is Danny and Jody threw Chuck and Bob out of the house. So I watched this just the other day. It was near the end of season 2. Jody had moved in with a girl, a lesbian, because he's gay, and then he was introducing her to his family, and the entire time Bob kept making jokes, because that's who Bob is. And at one point, Jody even grabbed Bob's hair, pulled him back, and leaned in close to Chuck, and threatened to do something to Bob. I don't remember, put him in a wood chipper or something. I know someone threatened to put him in a wood chipper or something at one point. People have threatened to cut him up. People have tried to kill him, and he's just a dummy. I'm not even kidding. Like, seriously, it's the funniest thing ever. If you don't believe me, go to YouTube, put in soap TV show Chuck and Bob, because they will understand what you mean, and you will see some of the funniest things, and yeah. So and then Mary and Alice is the lesbian, go into the kitchen, and so it's just the guys left, and Bob says something else. I just watched it the other day, and for some reason I can't remember what he said, but he said something else. So Danny and Jody grab Chuck, because Chuck always keeps a hold of Bob, and the two of them, as Bert just watches in amusement, throws them out of the house, so that Bob won't say anything else about Alice or to Alice. And it's funny. It's like, wow, they just had enough of Bob. Number 5 is Danny attacking Bob. So this was when, so Bert went through a lot. Like I said, the show goes downhill, and one of the things that bugged me the most, besides some of my favorite characters leaving, was the fact that Mary had stuck by Bert through all of his little things. She found out that there's at one point where he was impotent, and she stuck by him through that. There was one time when he found out that he technically killed her first husband, even though it was in self-defense because he tried to kill him, but she found out that and stuck by him through that. There was the whole point where his son died. She stuck by him through that. Then after his son died, he kind of had a mental breakdown, because he loved his son and he was dead, and he started thinking he could go invisible by doing this. He was invisible, and then he was re-invisible. She stuck by him through that, and she eventually convinced him to go into a mental institution to get a little help, and then I don't remember what happens, but Mary ends up needing him, because he was always like really poor, like grew up in really low life, but then he ends up becoming sheriff, I think, or at least a cop of some sort. And then when Mary needed him, I don't remember what happened. Like I said, I don't remember the end very well, the end of season 3 or season 4 at all. But she ended up going through stuff, and then he kind of turned his back on her, and he wasn't there for her when she was there for him. And there was also the fact where he saw aliens. He ended up seeing aliens, and he didn't get abducted by aliens. And she stuck by him through everything. So yeah, and it just really made me mad that. But anyways, point of this is he was at a mental institution at this point, and he had run away, so they were all there waiting for him, and then Bob kept making his slow remarks. I don't remember what things he was saying, but he kept making his slow remarks about. I know one of the remarks he said was, this makes me feel safe because the insane people can just come in and out. I don't remember exactly what it was he said, but it was something along those lines. So, and then Mary had tried to attack him. Jody, I think, tried to attack him, but people kept pulling it back. But then Danny did attack him, and there was like this couch, so that's where Chuck and Bob was sitting, and then he got on the couch, started attacking this doll, and then these people that worked there had to split them up and believe that they were patients, and then he was like, no, you don't understand, he said some really hurtful things, and then the doctor was like, oh, so the doll says some really hurtful things, so you tried to kill the doll. And I swear both of these families need to be checked into that mental institution because they're all insane. I swear. Number 4 is Danny twisting Bob's head. Now, this was right after Chuck and Bob's first appearance. So at this point, Jody was always out. Jody was actually one of the first openly gay characters in TV history, I'm pretty sure. And he never actually it never showed him kissing a guy, obviously, because it was still the 70s. And I mean, look at Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It started in the late 90s and ended in the early 2000s, and they didn't have Willow and Tara have their first gay kiss until middle season 5, which I think was 2001. So, and they had started dating in the middle of season 4, but they couldn't have their first kiss for a whole season. Yeah. So, and that was 2000s. So, a lot has changed since then. But so Jody never showed Jody kissing a guy, but he did have a boyfriend, Dennis. But at the beginning, even though he was out, there Bert was always creeped out by him, and Danny didn't believe it. He explains to Jody why he didn't believe it at first, but this was at the point when Danny still didn't believe him and just believed he was this comedy jokester saying all this stuff for a laugh. And so Bob ends up calling him a fruit, I think, because he was called a fruit several times in the series. I know Bert called him fruit a lot because Bert didn't like Jody and Danny didn't like Bert, so it was this whole thing. But so so Bob called him a fruit a couple times, and Danny kept warning him to stop. And then he ended up saying something else about Jody. Maybe it was calling him a fruit. I don't remember. But then Danny decided to he grabbed his head and twisted it completely around. And then everyone was shocked, even Danny. And Danny even tried to apologize. And I was like, this guy, oh my gosh, he's a doll. Remember that? Because a lot of times they do forget it. They do forget it. I think Mary's the only one who doesn't forget it. Well, she has before, but she usually reminds herself. Everyone else needs to be reminded. Well, I don't think the Tates ever forget except for Jessica, cause but the Tates aren't around Bob that much. It's mostly the Campbells that have to deal with him. But yeah. Anyways, so Chuck tried to move it, but Bob was like, other way, and then it kind of just zipped around, and he was back, and he was like, huh, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is So number where am I? 3 is Bert squeezed Bob's neck and it popped off. Like I said, they have actually tried to kill his stomach before. So I just watched this not that long ago. It's one of my favorite Chuck and Bob scenes, and for some reason I can't remember what happened beforehand. Okay, yes I do remember. So it was after Peter's death, and Bob was saying stuff about him, and Bert kept saying stuff. And at one point he called him an idiot, and then Bert was like, "Hey, that's my son." And then Bert was like, and then Bob was like, "Sorry," and then pause, and then he said, "Dead idiots." And then everyone got ready to stop Bert, because every time Bob said something, everyone would jump up to stop whoever he was insulting so that they wouldn't attack the dummy. They don't always succeed, but then Bert was like, he told him that he was okay, and then he kind of tapped Bob on the shoulder, and Bob looked at him, and then he grabbed his neck, started squeezing, and the neck just popped up. It did. His head didn't pop out or off or completely or anything. It just popped up, and then everyone was shocked. And then Mary's like, "What are you doing?" And the bird's like, and he lets go. And then he kind of just looks at it, and then he kind of just does this with his head to put it back in place, and it was hilarious. Like, oh my gosh, he just tried to strangle a dummy. Number 2 is Benson throwing Bob out of the window. So this was after Peter's murder as well, a little bit before that one though, I think, because this is when they were all talking, because they were all suspects and stuff, and they were all trying to figure out who could have done it, this and that, and Bob was looking at Danny, and Danny was like, you think I did, don't you? I know you think, you've been looking at me this entire night and stuff like that. And then Corinne's like, they haven't been looking at you, they've been looking at me, because she was actually dating Peter. They had lived together and everything. And then Judy's like, they're not looking at you, they've been looking at me, because people just, I mean, even, it's funny, because when the cop, I forgot, Tinkler, that was his name, was telling everyone why they were suspects, Corinne's, Jessica's, and Chester's were pretty obvious in a way. But he said that the only reason why Jody was a suspect is because he was a homophobe. Oh my gosh. He was gay, basically. And he said that the reason why Benson was a suspect is because he's black and a butler. Because apparently the butler always does it. So yeah, I mean, honestly, some of these jokes probably didn't age that well, but they're still funny, because the thing is, when people say stuff like that, they have to also remember when this was made. And that's the thing for me. Remember when it was made, okay? If it was made today, nothing that happened in this show could probably pass, like, seriously. But I still laugh at it because it was made in the 70s, you know? But anyways, so, but yeah, it was funny. I lost word. Oh yeah. But then Bob ends up saying he looked over at Benson, which is the butler for the case, and said, I think Black that guy did it. And then Benson just looks at him. He grabs Bob out of Chuck's hand, and Danny, who was already a little upset at Bob, grabbed Chuck so that he could stop him. Benson walked over, threw him out the window, and then Danny let go of Chuck, and he rushed to the window, and then Bert just, and it's funny because the funniest thing is that Benson just walks all over, all cool, like he did just throw doll out the window, and then he high-fives Danny before sitting down, and it was just hilarious. Do not mess with Benson. Like I said, like there's this time when this detective kept the one that Corinne's biological mother had hired to figure out who had killed Peter, to get Corinne off, because she was originally the one arrested for the murder of him. And the detective finally stopped harassing Chasing, started harassing Benson. Benson yells at him. He's like, you can do whatever you want to do, but when you mess with me, he grabs the detective, picks him up, puts him on top of the cake he had made for dessert. It was hilarious. But that's not the point of this video, so let's move on. So, honorable mentions, Mary trying to attack Bob. That was also in the mental institution right before Danny actually did attack Bob, because Mary tried to, but then Danny and Jody held her back. Mary spraying Bob in the eyes. This was right after, right before he got home after being released from the hospital. And Mary was complaining because she just found out that Bert had killed her first husband, who had tried to kill Bert, which made it self-defense. So and then Bob made a comment about her liking killers, and then she sprayed him in the eyes with whatever she had, some sort of spray. And she just did it so, I don't know, my mind just went all jumbled. One more word and he goes into his fireplace. I don't remember who said that. For some reason I want to say Benson said that, because it sounds like something Benson would say. But honestly, when it concerns Bob, it sounds like anyone would say that. Like, seriously. It doesn't take much for them to get annoyed with Bob at this point. Bert trying to attack Bob. I don't remember that one. And then the detective that the Corinne's mother had hired before she harassed the Tate. He went to harass the Campbells, and he got tired of Bob talking, so he just put a little rag inside Bob's mouth to shut him up so he could talk to everyone else, and it was funny. Number 1, this is the funniest. Jody hiding Bob in the refrigerator. So for the scene, you see the Campbell kitchen, okay? No one's in there. Then all of a sudden, Jody walks in holding Bob, which is very weird because you never see Chuck and Bob without one another. And then, so you see Jody walk over, and then he puts Bob all smushed together so he can fit him in the refrigerator. And then Chuck comes in, and he's all frantic looking for Bob, and asks Jody, and Jody denies it, but then Jody does say he wants to talk to him, and maybe then Bob would turn up, and then Chuck was like, "You do know where he is." So Jody tells him how Bob's been sending him threatening notes and trying to convince Chuck that Bob isn't real because Chuck is Bob. And Chuck is frantic. He doesn't know what to do without Bob. I'm pretty sure he's antisocial. Like, he's had Bob his entire life, and now he doesn't know how to communicate without Bob. Because Bob does most of the communicating. I swear Bob has more lines than Chuck. I'm not even kidding you here. Bob has more lines than Chuck. So he sliced open an orange and tried to have the orange speak, and I'm pretty sure he used the same voice he used for Bob. Because I think he only has one voice, unlike people like Jeff Dunham. He has several different voices for several different puppets. But and then Jody took the orange, and then he tried to do it with other fruits and stuff, but Jody kept trying to take them, and he was like, "Bob's not real, Bob's not real." And then Bert came in, and he was, I think he was in a good mood, and he started making stuff. He opened the refrigerator, grabbed something, and went back, and finished making what he needed. And Chuck was still frantic. Jody was just annoyed at this point, and then Bert opened the refrigerator again to get butter, I think, and then Bert has some of the funniest facial expressions. Like when he saw Jody wearing a dress in episode 2, I think, he was like, oh, I don't even know how to explain his facial expressions, but they're just hilarious. But when he saw Bob in the refrigerator, his face, he started screaming, his face wide, and then he just walks out of the kitchen, and then Chuck grabs Bob, who was shivering and freezing, and then Bob was like, "You're a monster. I wouldn't be surprised if you were the one that had killed Peter." And then Jody was like, "What?" And then as Chuck and Bob are leaving, Bob tells Chuck, "You know the little light stays on," and Chuck's like, "Oh, really? It does." And then they're gone, and Jody's just like, But it was hilarious, and Chuck was just trying to, oh my gosh. Like I said, the first 2 seasons, especially season 1, is just solid. So I do recommend it. The full episodes are on YouTube, so you can watch them there. But it was just funny, and yeah. There are some sad moments, though. Yeah, it is comedy, but there's some heartwarming, sweet moments. There's some really sad moments. The season 1 finale is a good. I lost my train of thought. Well, I didn't lose my train of thought, but I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's late. Okay, I'm tired. I was already going to be in bed by now, but I wanted to do this video tonight, so I did it. I probably won't even get it ready to upload until tomorrow because I want to go to bed. So yeah. But those are some of the best moments when everyone's had enough of Bob, because everyone always has enough of Bob. But yeah, I just wanted to share that because I don't think anyone knows about this show anymore. And this video turned out to be a lot longer than it was supposed to be because I ended up trying to explain a little bit about soap, and I might have went into a little bit of detail because I don't talk about soap that often, and I got excited to talk about it because, like I said, no one really even knows it exists. So you should definitely check out the full episodes. The full episodes for seasons 1, 2, and 3 I know because I looked them up. I don't know about season 4. They should, since they have the other full seasons. But I didn't even bother looking that one up. Like I said, I did not like it. But I don't remember. I remember the season finale only because it left off with those 3 cliffhangers. I'll tell you what they are because y'all probably wondering. Well, one was the fact that Jessica's boyfriend, because she had finally ended things with Chester, had a lot of enemies, so they kidnapped her, and literally the show ends with a bunch of gunmen pointing at her, and then they say fire, shoot her, and then the show is over, and that's literally how it ends. But right before that, it shows Bert was sleeping with Chester's new wife, and he had a gun towards Chester, because he's actually the one that killed Peter, so he could kill again. I wouldn't be surprised. But of course, that was because they found out he had a brain tumor, so that took over his, I don't know. But there was also Bert, who was a cop, was entering a room with two men pointing a gun at him, as another one was following him pointing a gun at him. So it ended with like that. So that's always fun. But anyways, that's all. So please watch, if not just to watch everyone try to kill Bob, a dummy, because that is one of the funniest parts of the show. Well, that and Benson, just being Benson. So please like and subscribe and comment if you've seen the show, if you want to see the show, and if you think it's worth seeing because of all the things I just showed you. So I will talk to you guys later.